Aesthetics is one of the four courses at Zhongyuan Christian University. Zhongyuan Christian University attaches great importance to aesthetic education because it is an important facility that cultivates people's inner life and moral character. Aesthetic is not only important to us in creation, but even more so is true in personality development. Today, it is our great honor to have Dr. Jan Josl to give us a fascinating talk on the subject of art and politics. Dr. Jan studied philosophy and aesthetics at Charles University. He now teaches ethics and philosophy at Jan Komensky University, Ambis University, and Charles University, and focuses on phenomenological aesthetic, art ethics, mass culture, and humor. I won't say much more here, so let us now warmly welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you for inviting me to your university, even though it's a long distance from Prague. So good afternoon, everyone, in the classroom. In Prague now it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And today I would like to talk about the intriguing question: to what extent can art and politics influence each other? Let me start in the 50s. The 50s I call the shadow of Stalinism because the art in this era in Czechoslovakia is under the tight control of communist regime. It's built on a hill, Letna, which overlooks the whole Prague. You can see the whole Prague from this point in Prague, and it was again a symbol of dominance of Soviet Union over Czechoslovakia. Stalin was overlooking the whole Prague. But fortunately, as you will see, thanks to the artists and writers, it was later demolished in 1962. Also following this freedom of speech, we come to the 60s, where this gradual expansion of artistic freedom inspired the rise of small theaters, translations of Western literature, and also symbols of that were representing at the time the Western culture, like long hairs, rock and roll music, that were mostly imported from US and Western Europe. So this play centers around a young man who is called Hugo Pludek, who, without actually intending to, becomes involved in a series of absurd situations at a bureaucratic garden party. And ultimately, at the end of the play, he's promoted to director of one of the department in the communist regime, despite his absolute lack of knowledge about what he should do. And what you have there as a quote from the play, it's at the end, the main character, Hugo Pludek, is reflecting on his promotion, and he says, well, it doesn't matter what I know. What matters is that I can say the right things at the right time. And this line from the play highlights the absurdity of the system at that time, where competence is actually secondary to the ability to conform to the party's and communist rhetorics. The 1970s brought us the name such as normalization, return to a strict authoritarian control under the Soviet oversight. Artists again faced quite intense censorship. In 1976, a group of musicians called Plastic People of the Universe were arrested. The Plastic People of the Universe was the band primarily focused on playing rock music, and they had no interest in the politics. Nevertheless, the group was accused from hooliganism, indulgence in drugs, and performing vulgar songs. And I have a short video so you can hear the music, what they played. I will tell something a little bit about the lyrics later. Maybe can I ask you, Joanna, to play the video now? Thank you.
Koupil jsem si francouzku, dal jsem za ní 30 korun. Třetí vosku syn, jestli je lepší než rum.
it's what you saw. It's the representation of so-called underground culture. So it's not official culture of the regime at the time. You can see there people with long hair dancing, probably drinking alcohol. The lyrics of the songs are not political, though. They are just singing about Francovka, which was a alcoholic solution used at the time as a perfume or as a something that will help you to heal the sore throat, and they compare it to rum, saying that Francovka is cheaper and there is more alcohol in it. However, against the backdrop of the Helsinki Accords, the fact that this group was arrested for performing non-political pieces of music raised opposition not only in the underground of Czechoslovakia at the time, underground culture, but also among intellectuals, again, like Václav Havel. And they thought that if the regime assigned itself to adhere to the human rights, this arrestation of the rock band for performing their songs in the public is actually violation of the agreements that the regime had committed itself to. We come to the last period in the Czechoslovakia era of communism. The last is the 80s, the era of Glasnost and the Velvet Revolution. Soviet Union, new leader Nikita Khrushchev came with the policies of Glasnost. It means openness, and perestroika, restructuring the Eastern Bloc. But encouraged by the freedom and resistance of the artists in 1980s, this only inspired the political change in Czechoslovakia. By the end of the 80s, in 1989, the cultural resistance converged with political activism and ignited the so-called Velvet Revolution. So, as you can see in a conclusion, the Czechoslovakia's history quite nicely demonstrates that art can be far more than only entertainment and fun, or even more than just a simple protest. It can be a catalyst of social and political change, as in the case of Jaroslav Seifert and the writers who ignited the change to 1960s, or it can even lead to a revolution like the action of the rock band that ignited in its consequences actually the Velvet Revolution, or the most extraordinary thing when the artistic movements from the 1960s in Czechoslovakia actually motivated the Soviet Union to military invade Czechoslovakia and to use tanks against the books. And finally, in 1989, and in the during the Velvet Revolution, artists always played a pivotal role in shaping my country's destiny. So, at the end, I strongly encourage you to think about the pearls in your own society, in your own country. How has art actually influenced Taiwan's political landscape, and to think about whether art still even now can serve as a force that can change the world today. And thank you for your attention, and I look forward to at least some question if we have some time right now.
So far we've been talking about art being used to fight oppression, so that artists can share their insights and share their thoughts. However, I feel like, wouldn't it be quite dangerous if the oppression was fought very fiercely? Because there has been cases in the past with Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, for example, Fidel Castro himself quoting, saying that art is actually a weapon that could be used to fight against oppression. So I was wondering if this would go out of hand if people would understand that art could really take over the world if it's dangerously.
Yes, well, as I mentioned in the answer to the previous question, the art probably can work both ways. There are not only those who resisted the regimes, but also the regimes, of course, many times use the art for its own purposes as ideological weapons that can control people. So yes, I definitely agree with you that the art can get out of the hand, which is, of course, the idea behind most of the concerns about art in the political sphere. Like in, for example, as I mentioned at the beginning of my lecture, in Plato. He is aware of the power of art over the human souls, over the human emotions, and he considers this too dangerous to be led without control and censorship. So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. Alexander Dubček, he is a very important person during the Spring of Prague. And then, can you tell us about what happened when Spring of Prague occurred, and what is the role during the time he's playing?
Well, during the Prague Spring and the Alexander Dubček's rule, the connection to the headquarters in the Kremlin in Moscow was quite loosened, and thanks to the atmosphere in the 60s that I described here from the cultural point of view, it also entered the political couloirs of the Czechoslovakia. So not only the artists felt more freedom of the speech, but it brought more freedom to the political thinking of the official politics. And they also were playing with the ideas of reforms of the regime, and they also were considering like opposition to the Communist Party. Actually, Václav Havel at the time wrote an essay on opposition where he was considering that for the Communist Party at the time there should be some kind of opposition, at least in a voice of people or another party. But of course, the consequence of this thinking is that if there is another party that can criticize the official political stream, they also can later get into the government themselves. So this is why also the Kremlin reacted in such a fierce way. And Dubček, he was the symbol of the time. He was the man who made these expressions and these reforms possible at the time, because around him there was the group of reformist politicians. However, of course, as it is in politics, you always have another group which was strongly faithful to the Moscow dictate. And at the end of the 1968, after the invasion, of course, the other party got the authority and the power over the reformist party, and most of the reformists were fired. They were no longer in a politics anymore. So. The Dubček was a very interesting figure. Of course, I don't know how familiar you are with the invasion in the 1968, but in order to make it legal, the representatives of the Czech Republic were invited after the invasion to Moscow, where they signed the papers that they actually asked the Moscow to send the troops, so they made the invasion legal. But it was, of course, under the atmosphere of fear and threatening. But this is like a historical detail that I'm not sure whether you are familiar with. But yes, Dubček is a very important person there.
I appreciate very much for Dr. Jan Josl, and he gives us a thought-provoking and impressive talk. And I appreciate all participants, both on Teams and in person, for engaging so well. Now we are going to close Microsoft Teams and see you next time. And then can we give Professor Dr. Jan Josl a big clap?
Okay.
Thank you so much, and then
Thank
take
you
care.
very much. You
See you
too.
next time. Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye. Bye-bye.